Hey there everyone, this is Samuel Johnson and welcome back to the MCU Perspectives, What If Edition. And today we're going to be discussing episode 3 of Marvel's What If. What if the world lost its mightiest heroes? Now, you all probably know the story of the Avengers, regardless of whether you follow the shows, the comics, the movies, you know the story. How there came a day in the Marvel universe when the Earth faced a threat so great that no lone hero could face it alone. And it was on that day that the Earth's mightiest heroes came together and formed the Avengers. One of Earth's greatest defenses against the forces of evil. And how after that first battle, the team continued to face off against these threats, and that whenever the Earth was threatened, they all came together, fought the battle, and no matter what happened to the team, whether they broke up or splintered or where there was tension, they would always come back together, and they would always be there to save the world, even when things got dark. However, what if the team never formed? What if before the Avengers got the chance to come together, they were taken out? And that's where this episode comes in. The episode actually begins like during the events of Iron Man 2, where after Tony had his little suicidal binge where he went on a drunken stupor at his birthday party, got into a fight with War Machine, and then just got his ass handed to him. He went to that donut shop. And then, of course, that's where Nick Fury and Black Widow met back up with him. How Nick Fury told him about how he knew about the poison from the arc reactor in his chest and how it was infecting him. And of course, how during that conversation, when Black Widow came up and stabbed Tony with a syringe that's supposed to contain an antidote that wouldn't stop the poisoning, but it would at least slow it down. That, of course, happens in this continuity as well. Things generally go the same. However, instead of Tony suddenly getting better, he begins to scream. He suddenly is in pain, and in front of Nick Fury and Natasha's eyes, he collapses onto the floor, dead. And yeah, both of them are obviously confused as to what the hell happened. Of course, with the circumstances as they are, Black Widow's the prime suspect, since she's the one that injected him with the syringe. And so she's arrested, and she's the one and Shield, of course, is going to investigate to see what the hell happened. But of course, Nick Fury does not believe for a second that Black Widow is responsible, so he tells her, I know you didn't do it, but I need someone on the outside. Someone in S.H.I.E.L.D. targeted Tony, and I need you to find out who it was. And as such, she slips her the syringe, and as she's being transported in an armored truck, she gets out of her cuffs and then just beats up her entourage before escaping. In the meantime, Nick Fury also gets a call from Phil as the post-credit scene from Thor occurs, as they find Mjolnir in bed in New Mexico, and so just like in Thor, Phil Coulson calls Nick Fury, and they get a team out there to build a site around it and contain it. As such, Fury says that with something this powerful, someone's probably going to come by to claim it, so he's hoping that someone is on their side, and sure enough, just like in Thor, the Son of Odin himself comes in, takes out the guards, and of course makes his way to Mjolnir, which also leads to a funny line where Phil Coulson calls him beautiful. As such, things go the way they do in the movie, where he makes it to Mjolnir. Clint Barton is there with a shot ready to take him out, and he's waiting for Nick Fury to deliver the order to shoot. But just as Thor reaches for the hammer, there's a lightning strike, and Clint Barton shoots, hitting Thor square in the chest and killing him. Of course, Clint's like, I didn't do that, I didn't shoot, but of course, the evidence is kind of against him, so of course Clint is arrested, and Nick Fury is of course wondering what the hell. Of course, Clint is defending his innocence, that he wouldn't do that. He doesn't misfire, he doesn't miss, he is the best with an arrow, he would never have done that. He would have never slipped up and accidentally shot a guy. As such, Nick Fury, of course, thinks that there's something more going on, so he goes into Clint's cell to talk to him, only he's dead too. No one knows how he died, but He is not. But yeah, when he goes in, he's dead. Eyes open, no signs of it, no signs of force entry, no incisions, no pricks. He's just dead. And of course, that just leaves Nick Fury with questions. He begins wondering what the heck's going on, and he begins immediately seeing the connections right away. That while all these people seemingly had nothing in common, there was one very big thing: the Avengers Initiative. Clint Barton and Tony Stark's names were on the list of possible candidates. And while Thor, and based on the blood analysis of Thor, he was clearly not of this earth and was clearly more than 1,000 years old, so he could have been a valuable asset. So clearly someone offed him because he could have been a potential candidate. Ergo, Nick Fury realizes that there's something going on and it has to do with the Avengers Initiative, and as such, he decides he's going to do some deeper investigation. Unfortunately, that's when things start getting more hairy. First off, as a result, and just as outside we see Phil Coulson driving in after he went out to get coffee, suddenly the Bifrost beam opens up right there in the middle of the desert, causing everything to go nuts, causing a whirlwind to kick up and everything. And we see that when the Bifrost settles, there's Loki with that little group of Thor's little entourage from his movies, and an army of Asgardian warriors. As such, Nick Fury goes to talk to them, and Loki tries going through this whole gives this big speech about how he's Loki, son of Odin, rightful ruler to wherever the hell the Frost Giants are from, because I honestly do not remember. But just how he's destined for greatness, blah, blah, blah. But as he's giving the speech, Nick Fury's phone goes, which leads to a funny scene where Loki gets annoyed and says, "Hey, are you going to get that? I'm kind of in the middle of something." And so Fury picks up the phone, and that's where we can kind of go back to Black Widow. It turns out that in her investigation, she decided that she needed to go to someone off the record. And so she went to Betty Ross. At first, Ross thinks that she's there to talk about the Hulk, but no, Black Widow just says, "I need someone off the radar to figure out how Tony Stark died, and it has something to do with this." And so as such, Betty looks the syringe over and finds that the antidote didn't seem to ever leave the syringe. It's like someone shot a needle through it. And so it's clear that something isn't right. And as such, she got a call earlier from Nick Fury, who told her about how the Avengers Initiative how people on the Avengers Initiative were being targeted. And unfortunately, her name is on that list, as well as a certain Dr. Banner. And so, as Black Widow hears this, she, of course, gets a weird feeling and looks out to the horizon, because, again, this is taking place during the Incredible Hulk, so they're at that university from during the middle part, during the second act of the movie, where Bruce went in there disguised as a pizza guy, he and Betty talked, and then the military showed up. So Black Widow realized they're coming, and so she sees the pizza guy uniform and realizes Betty's hiding Bruce. As such, she goes to get Bruce, and he's willing to, and he's heard everything, and he knows that Black Widow is to be trusted. And they did not get Edward Norton back to play Bruce Banner. It's Mark Ruffalo, which makes sense, but it is kind of a little weird, especially considering the setting and how different Edward Norton and Mark Ruffalo play Bruce. But bottom line, she realizes that their lives are both in danger, so she tries to escort him off the campus, which is when General Ross comes with his army, and they surround them in that glass skylight like in the movie, albeit they don't lock them in. As such, that's when Black Widow calls Nick Fury, telling him to try and calm everything down, that they've got Bruce Banner. She tries telling Ross, "I have him in my custody, everything's fine," when suddenly a shot flies out and hits Bruce in the shoulder, with General Ross saying, "I didn't authorize that, who shot that?" And unfortunately, as that happens, Natasha gets off the phone with Fury, and Loki explains why he's here. He's here to avenge the death of Thor. And pretty much he's willing to take his anger out on Earth. Bring out that little blue thing they stole from that blue whatever that they stole from that Odin stole from the Frost Giants, and is using it to just freeze everything. And it's at that same time that Bruce Banner hulks out because of the bullet, and begins just tearing apart Fury's forces. Of course, Natasha realizes the danger and and when Betty tries to run in the middle of the battle, trying to stop her father from killing the Hulk, Natasha says there's nothing you can do. Until suddenly Bruce starts to puff up. And I don't mean like he gets stronger. No, I mean he just starts to blow up like a balloon. His muscles start getting bigger. He seems to be expanding, and it's clear from the Hulk's expression he doesn't know why this is happening. And just like that, he explodes, turning into a big mist of green dust. And it's clear that it's just very unusual and just so wrong. As such, and back with Fury, he manages to talk Loki down and say, "Look, I think your brother's killer is someone that we're investigating. We all need to work together here." And so Loki, with the urgings of Lady Sif, does say, "Fine, you have till the next sunrise to get me the killer, or I am taking your whole planet." As such, things are just getting more and more complicated. Natasha does decide that she needs to look more into the Avengers Initiative files, and so she calls Phil Coulson to get his password so she can access the files. And it's a funny password. It's Steve, I heart Steve, or I love Steve. I forgot the whole thing, but it's just clearly fanboying for Steve. You have to watch the episode; it's hilarious there. But as she looks through the files, she noted something very interesting. And this is verbatim, I think. I wrote it down, so I hope I'm quoting this right. How would a woman who died 2 years ago access the files yesterday? As at that point, things seem to click in Natasha's head, and she calls Fury. But by that point, she hears a commotion behind her, and she gets up, and she says, "You won't stop me, and you won't stop S.H.I.E.L.D." So she gets into a fight, and then something is fighting back. Something is clearly fighting her and kicking her ass, but we can't see what it is. And as she's fighting, Nick Fury finally picks up the phone, and she tries calling she crawls to her phone and says, "Fury, it's hope. It's all about hope." Before something drags her back into the dark. As such, she's dead now, and so Fury is just wondering what's going to happen. What can they do? The clock is ticking, and they have no leads. And scrap that. The only lead he has is Natasha's message. Hope. It's all about hope. And of course, Phil Coulson reminds Fury that his name is on the Avengers Initiative list too, since he's the one who put it all together, so he's most likely the next target. But of course, Fury is still thinking it over, and even during all this, he considers calling Captain Marvel since he still has the pager that she modified. However, as he looks it over, I think Phil says something that hope will always live on, and that's at that point where he realizes hope. It's all about hope. As such, he tells Phil that he's got to go see someone, that he might be dealing with a god or making a deal with the devil, and so he drives to where the Asgardian forces have touched down, and talks to that Asgardian destroyer thing, that armor thing that Thor fought in his movie, and says he wants to see his boss. As such, it cuts to a cemetery where we see Nick standing over the grave of Hope Van Dyne, and who it turns out in this reality was an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., and she died 2 years ago while on a mission. And so as Nick Fury stands over her grave, we see someone coming up. And we soon find out who the killer of the Avengers was. It is in fact Hank Pym, who is adorned in the Yellow Jacket armor. Now, it's clearly not the same as in the main timeline, but as there are clearly modifications made, like that looks like the helmet definitely looks like something that looks similar to Ant-Man. But at the same time, but I'll give it credit, it does look nice. It definitely looks creepy seeing Hank Pym in the Yellow Jacket armor, as well as seeing it with the modifications that show he made it instead of whatever the hell that guy's name was. Was his name Cross? I think it was Cross. Yes, I think it was Cross. Yeah, his name was Cross. But yeah, it turns out that Hank Pym blamed Fury for the death of his daughter, and so he decided, you took hope away from me, so I took hope away from you. And it turns out he was behind every one of the killings. Like he shrunk down and got into the needle and flew through before the antidote could. killing Tony. He was the one that caused Clint to he was the one that screwed with Clint's aim and caused him to shoot Thor prematurely. He screwed with Clint Barton by flying inside his body, which is how no one was able to track him because he was small. He was the bullet that flew into the Hulk, and he supercharged him while he was inside. And it's just pretty much like they just showcase how he was able to kill them all. Although Nick Fury asked, "Well, why did you kill the Asgardian? He wasn't on the list." And Hank's response is, come on, you would have seen him as an asset. I was doing him a favor. Like, at that point, it's clear that Hank is just nuts here. So, as such, Hank and Fury seem to get into a fight, and Fury's actually very adept for a guy that's missing one eye, which even Hank notes. And then that's when things get trippy, as Fury seems to be disappearing and reappearing all around the cemetery. Hank can't seem to get a hit on him. And then multiple Furies come up, and it's at this point you realize it's Loki. I'm not even gonna. Yeah, it's clearly Loki that's in the drive. That's behind this. As such, during the fight, he manages to encase Hank Pym in a block of ice as he tries flying up, and the ice breaks, and he's detained. And so Fury goes to him and says, and tells him that she didn't die. She didn't die. Like, she wasn't a statistic. She wasn't just some person that we used and then threw away. She was an agent. She made a difference, and she mattered. She mattered, and that's what we fight for. Fight for. She understood that, and that's why we fight. And she will be remembered. And she remembered. That's probably not what he said, but it's kind of along those lines that she did matter, and she did fight for a good reason. And as such, Hank is handcuffed and taken away, I think by the Asgardians. As such, Loki admits he had a lot of fun, and Fury tells him, "Well, just take your hammer and get off of the Earth." But Loki decided to be a dick. He decided, you know what? I like this place. I think I'm going to stay here a little bit longer. Fury asks how long, and we see the next day that Loki has marched down to the United Nations and is now subjugating all the world's leaders with the plan of taking over the planet. And this time, there are no Avengers there to stop him. So yeah, kind of a crap ending, but they do at least try to give hope, because as Fury and Coulson are standing over the Avengers coffins, Fury says the Avengers were never just a team, they were an idea, and that can never die. And the episode ends with Fury finding Captain America's ship and getting ready to thaw him out, before the camera pans over, and we see that Fury called Captain Marvel. So, yeah. What do I think about this episode? Okay, let me put it this way. Apparently, the first 3 episodes were released early for critics so they could judge them and give preliminary reactions. Out of all 3 episodes in the original of What If that they saw, they considered this one the weakest. And I can kind of see why. Now, don't misunderstand. The episode, believe it or not, I think is legitimately decent. But the only reason I would say it's decent is because of the third act. Is because the first 2 acts are the strongest. The first 2 acts of the episode, I think, really carry it. And in my opinion, it's a legitimately good mystery. It raises the stakes and makes you wonder who is targeting the Avengers, who is going after them, and how are they able to keep killing them? How are they able to sabotage all these ways? And how are they able to sabotage everything on so many levels? And in my opinion, it's all done really well. How it's executed is really interesting, as it's through the lens of the movies. Like, we see that scene with Nick Fury and Black Widow and Iron Man 2 where they're talking to Tony in the donut shop, and you see things go wrong when they try and give him the antidote for his poisoning, and instead he keels over. And then, of course, you see with Thor how he gets shot just before he can grab Mjolnir, or how Clint is the one arrested instead of Thor because he's the one that shot him, or Bruce Banner exploding during what should have been that epic fight at the campus in The Incredible Hulk. It's a very interesting seeing these moments from the Avengers films twisted and turned on their heads, and it's rather horrifying because it keeps you guessing. It keeps you wondering, who is this and why do they want to kill them? Why are they targeting the Avengers Initiative specifically? And as everyone is searching for answers, it does make you, and seeing how everything goes, it does make you wonder how things are going forward. And I'll give credit where it's due. The reveal of Hank Pym as the killer, I'm of two minds. On the one hand, suddenly that explains a lot of what happened, because as we've seen in the Ant-Man movies, the Pym particles seem to do allow someone to shrink in a way that they can easily slip into cracks or crevices and get around. And considering how he was getting around, it would kind of make sense why suddenly he would be able to do all these things and screwing with all these things. In ways that he would, like when he fought with Natasha, he shrunk himself down and was able to land a blow and was able to fight her as if he was a normal man. But because he was this small, she couldn't hit him. It would explain that. It would explain how he was able to get into the needle, because he shrunk down in there and he shrunk down in there before they could inject Tony or etc. It explains a lot. I will give credit. But at the same time, it does make you wonder how he got around too, which is a minor thing. And again, I'll kind of give crap this. I kind of give crap to this. I feel like there should have been more build up to that, more build up to Hank being the killer. I legitimately think that could have been improved. Like, because right before she said, "Hope, it's all about hope," I admit it did kind of click in my mind, because I thought to myself, the only person named Hope in the MCU is Hope Van Dyne. And I'm thinking to myself, well, how is she involved? And then you learn that she was an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. in this reality. Admittedly, though, that kind of came out of left field. Like, I feel like that there could have been, like, a hint about that. Like, we saw her name somewhere. And maybe we did, and I just missed it. But I feel like there should have been a little bit more build-up for that, instead of just, like, dropping her name in there. Especially when you see how that it turned Hank Pym rabid, which, to be fair, I think he went villainous in the comics too, but don't quote me on that. So, yeah, that one I'll give the knock to that. But with that being said, it is kind of cool seeing the twisted Hank Pym in this universe and how he altered the Ant-Man armor to be Yellow Jacket, and it's clear he's not doing well either, because as we saw in Ant-Man, apparently him using the Pym particles too many times kind of did not sit well with him. And my guess is that he was experimenting with them a lot, because when we see him in this continuity, his hair is disheveled and he looks like crap. So it's clear that his little revenge trip definitely did a number on him physically. But I think another reason why the episode kind of fell flat in the third act was not just because the reveal felt a little tacked on, or that it involved forces that had nothing to do with those movies. Because again, we didn't know that in this reality that Hope Van Dyne was an Avengers agent. I feel like there should have been like some little name drop in there or something. Maybe a blink and you'll miss it. Talking about Van Dyne or them being in contact with sources. Maybe having Hank be one of the sources that they contacted, or talk about how in this world his daughter died, and you think, well, why would that be important? And then boom, he's the killer. Again, I feel like that could have been built up with more. Again, the first two acts I think are spectacular. It raises so many questions, keeps you guessing on what's happening, The tension is legitimately palpable, especially when Natasha figures out who the killer is and gets her ass kicked by him. And admittedly, again, him shrinking does explain a lot. It's just, again, I feel like it could have been hinted at better in the episode. I feel like it could have been better executed. And the reveal better built up to. Then, of course, the other major aspect, the ending is dumb. I'm not going to beat around the bush. I think the ending is dumb. I think it's dumb that after they catch them, Loki decides, okay, I'm just going to take over, which I understand he probably would. It's Loki, but at the same time, like, we just got through this crisis, and suddenly he's like, well, since you guys aren't defended by superheroes anymore, I guess I can just swoop in and take it. That's like just an extra that's like an extra kick in the groin right there. Like, oh well, bad guy wins without even trying. Toodles, everyone. Like, just that's stupid. I think that's stupid. Now, again, to give credit, they do still try and give that last little bit of hope by having Nick Fury find Captain America frozen and showing he's clearly called Captain Marvel. So the Avengers are probably still going to be a thing in this universe, just with maybe like one of the founding members, just like maybe one or two of the founding members if you count Nick Fury, and Captain Marvel probably help. And considering that those five weren't the only superheroes in the world, especially with these movies, they could still find more. They could still find other heroes to join their little group. It's just, again, I think that's dumb. It's just like, that came out of nowhere too. again, I know it's Loki, and I know he has ambitions of world domination. It's just his decision to just suddenly take over, I think, was just a little dumb. And just like, it's like, okay, this was fun. Now I'm taking over your planet. Just like, again, does sort of make sense. It's just like it feels like it's pouring salt in the wound at that point, and it just kind of sours it a little bit more, in my opinion. Like, just, and again, I'm not saying that all what if stories should have a happy ending, because there are what if stories that even when the bad guy is beaten or something happens, they are still kind of have a bittersweet taste. Like, there was one what if story that talked about what if the Venom symbiote possessed Spider-Man when he had the black suit, and in that reality, it took him over, used him up until he was aged into an old man, then jumped to the Hulk, then took over Thor, and in that story, Peter died, and in order to stop the symbiote, Black Cat made a deal with the Kingpin that gave her lifetime servitude to him in exchange for the blueprints to destroy the symbiote. Again, while the symbiote is stopped, a lot of people. Well, someone died, and Black Widow kind of is now lost her future. It's bittersweet, and again, there are other what if stories or things that definitely have that sour tone, and this one does too. It just feels so out of left field. Again, I know it's Loki, but I get the feeling but I feel like that would have been better if we just got like a hint that he was preparing, or maybe he stuck around, or maybe he sticks around and stick around. We see that he's already planting the seeds, or maybe it would have been better if the ending was, that Loki charged it, or that Loki never left, or he was just hiding, and that he's already planting the seeds to take over. But no, it's just straight up invasion, and I think it's just dull. I think it's kind of dull. So, yeah. In my opinion, the third act is where the episode falls flat. The first two acts, in my opinion, are fantastic. They keep building on the tension, keep you guessing, making you wonder what's going on, and it's like a legitimately good murder mystery, and I like that, and I love murder mysteries. But the third act is where things fall flat. I'm of two minds when it comes to Hank Pym being the killer, because I think it's cool seeing seeing his twist on the Yellow Jacket uniform. I love seeing his deranged look, and his shrinking ability does explain a lot. It's just, it wasn't built up to in the course of the movie. Just wasn't built up to that well, in my opinion. Besides Hope, it's all about Hope, even though she wasn't a prominent character. I feel like it would have been better if we had a name drop of her somewhere, or they talked to Hank. And of course, Loki's quick invasion, I think, is just dumb. It's just dumb, and both of those do kind of lessen the episode's enjoyment, in my opinion. At the end of the day, the episode's not bad. I think it's perfectly okay. But yeah, I kind of do agree with the critic consensus. Out of all three episodes of What If so far, I think this one is the weakest. First episode was decent with some pacing issues, but it was a lot of fun, and just kind of seeing this alternate adaptation of Captain America: The First Avenger, but with Captain Carter and Steve Rogers as the Hydra Stomper. The second one, I think, was just fantastic. It was just fantastic seeing this altered reality and how things had changed with T'Challa in the role of Star-Lord. And this one, but this one, again, interesting story, interesting setup. First two acts definitely executed it well. Third act is where it falls flat. Could have built up to it better. Of two minds, could have built up to Hank Pym better. Could have built up better. Comes a little out of left field. And Loki invasion is stupid. And Loki just invading right there, it feels like just pouring salt in the wound. So, yeah. Overall, again, not a bad episode. Perfectly okay, but definitely the weakest so far. So, yeah. I think that's about it. Thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson. I hope you enjoyed this vlog, and I hope you watched the episode first before watching this, and I'll see you next week as we look at episode 4 of Marvel's What Up. So, till then, thank you for watching. I'm Samuel Johnson, and I hope you have a good night. Take care.